Hey everybody, Namrita here with the Tuesday evening workout review. This is the first structured workout of cycle 3, and we started off with 2 by 15 minutes of sweet spot intervals. And we're going to be doing a lot more work in the sweet spot zone in cycle 3. And again, what that zone is, it's kind of that in between tempo and threshold. And it's has all the same benefits as tempo, but more. So it's really designed to improve or increase your FTP or your lactate threshold from below. And we don't do the efforts right at our threshold because that would generate too much fatigue. So we do it slightly under. It's actually like really high tempo if you think about it. So if you were in this Zwift workout today, the color cues we were giving were to be basically like fields of green with speckles of yellow flowers. So yellow and green for the intervals, you're kind of in the right zone. And the focus today was really to feel that. Now, I think a lot of you did do have good luck feeling that power and kind of relating it to maybe what tempo also feels like. So just a little bit higher on the RPE scale. So if tempo is like a 5 to 6, which is what a lot of you in our group rate your RPE when we're doing tempo intervals. Of course, it can go up, the longer the interval is. You might see 6, 6.5, sometimes 7. But when we're starting sweet spot work, it's just a little bit higher. Like we were starting around an RPE of 6 out of 10 today. And most of you who I heard chime in when we were doing the RPE check got up to 6.5 on the first one, maybe 7. And then on the second interval, 7, 7.5, but no one really chimed in that they were working harder than a 7.5. So that's great. That tells us that you're not going too hard. The purpose here is to continue to build fatigue resistance, muscular endurance. We are really focused on all the good adaptations in the muscle too that will help to increase your lactate threshold. So mitochondrial enzymes, fiber conversion to slow twitch, the ability to use more carbohydrates, more lactate, more fat for fuel at these intensities. And really, we want to be able to extend the duration that we can do this over time. When you retest FTP, many of you will see that you actually, if you haven't improved yet with the lower intensity training, you might see a little bit of a bump in your FTP, again, shifting it up from below. Now, I have one of our athletes up here for review, and I wanted to show another scenario. So this particular athlete retested FTP this past weekend, like all of us did, and had a huge jump. So I think it was like a 10-watt increase in FTP. So today was going to be challenging. And we did kind of warn you about that too. If you are coming into sweet spot work cycle 3 with a significantly higher FTP, we need to kind of feel that out first because yeah, you earned that FTP, you increased it, you have the ability in you, but you also had a really good test, and now some of those adaptations, particularly in the periphery, so in the muscle, are still coming around. And so while we're not doing a 20-minute effort here, we were doing 2 15-minute efforts on the heels of a 20-minute test and a longer endurance ride on Sunday. It was going to be challenging. And so where the zones were set today, we really wanted you, again, to figure out what does sweet spot feel like for you. If you have a new FTP, how do you calibrate that these new zones to your feelings, to your heart rate, to your power, without really overdoing it. And so you can see here, when we compare planned and completed, a little more TSS, so 64 TSS versus the planned TSS of 62. But you can see because the intensity factor is a little bit lower at 0.77 versus the planned intensity factor of 0.79, the additional TSS came from the slightly longer workout. So an hour, 5 minutes versus an hour. So I'm going to go ahead and click analyze. We're going to look at this. So again, I point this file out specifically because, again, this rider is coming into this workout with a significantly higher FTP. So the zones are higher. And you can see just looking at it, so you can see the workout in the background. We had 2 by 15 minutes of sweet spot with slightly higher power target with slightly higher cadence target for the first and the last 5 minutes of each interval, and then slightly lower power target with slightly lower cadence, well, significantly lower cadence in the middle 5 minutes of the interval. So you can see, I mean, going into the first interval, not only did she completely nail it from a power standpoint, let's show cadence, and I'm going to hide the workout now. She did a really nice job with the cadence, with the cadence too. So I'll smooth this out a little bit. And this helps to see. So high cadence, low cadence, high cadence, and her power was pretty controlled. In the second 5 minutes, it looks like she had a little bit of a time, challenging time controlling her power maybe at the lower cadence, but she was able to regain that slightly lower cadence compared to the first 5 minutes, in the last 5 minutes. But it looks great. If I hover over watts here, I can show the zones. Let's see, hide cadence. Okay, so you can see those zones faintly in the background. So if I just kind of roll the cursor over this first interval, you can see with her new zones, she's at the high end of tempo, low end of threshold. So right in that sweet spot. She did awesome. To have this be such a higher target compared to just, a week ago when she was training with a FTP of 10 lower watts, that was really good. I might have suggested, especially if I look at the second interval, that she take it a little bit easier in this first one. Because you can see while the first 5 minutes of interval 2 was, again, pretty much spot on, it kind of went a little bit south from there. And I don't know what happened. We can look at cadence to see if we can glean anything. Let's see, hide zones. So it looks like, again, maybe a little bit of discomfort with this low cadence. So it could be something going on there. It looks like the power was not easily able to be controlled with the lower cadence. And possibly it was just, a little too much, a little too soon, and not riding into the effort enough with the new FTP. And I don't know what happened in this last 5 minutes, but it could have just been like either mental or physical, or gosh, fatigue is always a combination. But seeing that the cadence was dropping in that last 5 minutes with the power dropping tells me that it just wasn't going well. And I don't know if it was physical or mental or usually a combination. Let's look at heart rate too, because remember, heart rate is a measure of our body's response to the stress, to the load that we're being asked to pedal under. And so you can see here that heart rate did obviously, went up more so in the high cadence sections of the sweet spot work. And then it came down, took a little bit to come down in between intervals though. And then it went right back up with the next high cadence. But honestly, like if I see it come down here and come back up again, it doesn't really, it looks like maybe it was more leg fatigue that was the issue. And maybe, again, just like mentally getting used to the new FTP. So here is my point. So that's a look at the workout. I did create 2 intervals to compare. So SST1 was the first sweet spot interval. So let's look. The zones that we were trying to target were 180 to 191 for the first 5 minutes and the last 5 minutes, and 174 to 185 for the middle 5 minutes. Now, the normalized power for the first 15-minute interval was 185. So basically, you know, right there, right in zone. Power to heart rate, 2.49%. Really good. I mean, I don't see like, I think it was a super solid effort. However, there definitely was room to come down and still be in the zone. So again, if I look at the target zones of 180 to 191 for the first 5 minutes, we are definitely high here, and we had room to come down. So we could have averaged, you know, a few watts lower, still gotten the benefit of the workout, and maybe still felt better for the second interval. So let's compare now. So heart rate was 164, cadence was 90, which was great. Normalized power 185. Let's compare the second one. So here, normalized power of 163, definitely higher power to heart rate, right? Like, and that's because, again, the heart rate remained elevated, but the watts dropped quickly. So that's not exactly like the best metric to look at, because heart rate is going to be delayed. And if you all of a sudden drop off the power, your heart rate's going to take a while to come down. And you can see that here. But average heart rate 162, so it was actually a little bit lower than the first interval, and cadence was still up at 89. So all things considered, if we look at the zones again, a lot of tempo work, which is basically like, again, think of what sweet spot is. It's high tempo. It's pretty much, you know, a lot of the same adaptations. I think that this was a really good salvage job in the interval, and probably a really good learning experience to kind of feel what it's supposed to feel like and learn to be okay with holding back a little bit. And especially like with a big change in FTP, you know, how do we address that when we go into training? A big reason we are testing our FTP is to fine tune our training domains, our training zones. And we need to also triangulate with our heart rate, with our RPE mostly, but also, you know, heart rate to some degree as a kind of check. And so if you are not in control, and that goes back to like, what is the main thing that we're trying to focus on in incline mode, is to be in control. When we're doing sweet spot efforts, we need to be in control. And if we are struggling to hold an effort where either high cadence or low cadence, whatever the power target, if our heart rate's uncomfortable, we just need to bring it down a little bit, have a little bit of patience, try again the next day. Something that came up in our workout today is sweet spot can feel easier on some days. It never really feels easy, especially the longer you do it, but some days can feel relatively easy, and some days can feel really difficult. And today, especially if you had a new higher FTP, it probably felt pretty difficult. But I do want to compare. So, you know, just a couple weeks ago with this athlete's old FTP, the tempo intervals for, I think it was 2 by 18 minutes. So similar duration of effort. The numbers were 162 watts, 158 beats per minute for heart rate average, 78 RPM. So, you know, today it was still a big jump up. If I just look at, the whole workout now. Oops, let's hide the zones. So last time the athlete did 39 minutes at 162 watts. Today was 35 minutes at a normalized power of 170 watts. A little bit higher heart rate, but also significantly higher cadence. So last time the tempo cadence was 78 RPM and today was 89. So if you are feeling discouraged about the effort today, if it felt harder, one, you have this big new FTP that you just have to get used to. It's going to take a little bit of time, so have some patience. Good job on the test, by the way. The difficult part now is letting your body have some time to adjust to it, right? Because it's not instantaneous. When we start increasing time in zone, when we start adding, 2, 3 moderate workouts per week, the fatigue is real and the accumulated fatigue is real. And so we have to be patient, but, always look to at how much you've progressed. And so going from, tempo at 10 watts lower, just a couple of weeks ago to, almost the same amount of time today with more power. The strain was a little bit higher today, but that's to be expected with sweet spot. So these are all the signals that are going to bring about the adaptations. So that part will happen. If you stay the course, I guess the key message here is to not be discouraged, to celebrate, the progress that you've made, your new FTP, but also what do you do with that? We have to be patient. We have to dial down when we need to. Some days you might hit these numbers perfectly, and then other days you might have to be willing to knock off a few watts. Even if it's just for the first interval and you get warmed up, a lot of times you feel better on the second interval. So think about that when you execute the workout next time. The goal is to try to, get to where the feeling where you can pace these conservatively enough, but also accurately enough that you can actually hit the targets for the total time and zone for all the intervals. Well, I hope that helps. And I know that, I wanted to highlight this one because I know a lot of you are in the same boat with a higher FTP. So again, like that's good, but it's also a lesson in kind of how to approach cycle 3 and what can happen if you don't, if you're trying to hit those target numbers, maybe too quickly and not giving yourself enough room to still do almost the same amount of work, but you're going to get the same benefits. So anyway, that's it for the Training Peaks review tonight, and we will see you with another workout. I think it's tempo on Thursday, so we'll see you then.